The year is 1174. The king of Jerusalem, Amalric, has died, and the fate of the kingdom rests in the hand of a 13-year-old boy. But this just isn't any 13-year-old boy. No, this is a 13-year-old boy with leprosy. Now you might be thinking, Ludovicus, how is a leper going to run a kingdom surrounded on all sides by enemies? Well, keep watching and you'll be surprised. Baldwin IV was born in 1161 to one Amalric, brother of the king of Jerusalem, Baldwin IV. However, Baldwin I died in his 30s, and thus Amalric, being the closest male relative of Baldwin III, became the new king of Jerusalem, making our Baldwin next in line to the throne. To prepare him for the responsibilities of being the king, Baldwin had William of Tyre assigned him to teach him in liberal studies. One day, while Baldwin was playing with his friends, William noticed that Baldwin seemed to too easily endure being pinched by his friends, while they showed clear signs of pain when the same happened to them. When William later inspected Baldwin, it was found that his arm was completely numb. Though it had not been officially diagnosed until he was much older, the inner cause was certain it was leprosy. Despite his illness, Baldwin is described to be a bright, albeit quiet prince. By age 13, already a talented horse rider, which is more of a big deal than you think because at the time, medieval knights, especially Frankish ones, were expected to control their horse with their feet, as their hands were occupied with their lances and shields. Baldwin also took great interest in affairs of state, had excellent memory, and was a quick learner. And so, in 1174, when Amalric died, Baldwin IV became the new king of Jerusalem at age 13. However, as was custom at the time, a regent was assigned to him, one Raymond III, the Count of Tripoli. But by this time, Baldwin's illness became more and more apparent. Because Baldwin had leprosy, he could never have children of his own, so his younger sister Sibylla was married to William of Montferrat, who was a close cousin of the King of France and the Holy Roman Emperor, and could be counted on as a strong leader when Baldwin died. An ideal match, all things considered. But shortly after Sibylla and William Longsword's marriage, William Longsword died, leaving Sibylla pregnant with his child. Meanwhile, Baldwin IV finally assumes the throne upon reaching age 15, and immediately had to deal with his main rival and threat, Sultan Saladin of the Ayyubids Sultanate. This guy is one of the legends of the Crusading period. A Kurd born in the Seljuk Sultanate, he quickly rose to power and conquered both Syria and Egypt, setting his eyes on the Crusader states soon after declaring that he would destroy them. So when Baldwin took the throne, Saladin began attacking the southern half of the kingdom. With a significantly smaller army than Saladin and an overall disadvantage, Baldwin stayed in the fortified city of Ascalon while Saladin, confident in his numerical superiority, dispatched many detachments of his troops throughout the kingdom of Jerusalem, going as far as Jerusalem's city walls. Now, you might think at this point Baldwin would just stay in Ascalon and wait for a moment to strike. Well, you're half right, as Baldwin later left Ascalon, linking up with the Knights Templar alongside their master Odo of Saint-Amand, as well as the Knights Hospitaller. Also, shortly before, Baldwin received aid from Philip of Flanders and Henry II of England, since they were all part of the Angevin dynasty. Baldwin's army met Saladin at Montgisard, and despite Saladin having overwhelming numerical superiority, the Crusader army broke through the Ayyubids lines and forced them to flee, with Crusader cavalry playing a decisive role in breaking the Ayyubids lines and chasing them into a nearby swamp. Saladin himself barely escaped with his life, only being followed by a few companions. It was a complete and utter Crusader victory, with the 16-year-old Baldwin IV proving his competence as a warrior and as a ruler. But despite this great triumph, Baldwin knew that Saladin was still a threat, as Saladin now moved to conquer the Zengid stronghold of Aleppo, which would effectively surround the Crusaders in a sea of yellow. To counter this move, Baldwin ordered the construction of Jacob's Ford, a castle near the border with the Ayyubids. It would be garrisoned by the Knights Templar and was constructed over a 6-month period while Saladin was busy sieging Baalbek. But after that was over, Saladin marched into Jerusalem's northern lands near Sidon. Baldwin responded by marching his army north to meet Saladin, and initially he was successful in driving away the Sultan's army. But unbeknownst to the Crusaders, the armies they faced were not Saladin's main army. Soon, He attacked with a force that he held in reserve and defeated the Crusaders at Mari Ayyun, even capturing Odo of Saint-Amand. Saladin then followed up by attacking and capturing Jacob's Ford, brutally slaughtering the 700 prisoners taken at the castle. However, as Saladin withdrew, his army was struck by disease, killing many of his men, including 10 of his highest emirs. This was considered as divine retribution for the events at Jacob's Ford by the Crusaders. Baldwin's condition worsened, and the succession occupied his mind. To secure a strong regent for his nephew and heir, also named Baldwin, he married his sister Sibylla to Guy de Lusignan. This was opposed widely by the high nobility, among them William of Tyre and Raymond of Tripoli. Later, Baldwin once again faced Saladin, attacking Jerusalem from the north and the south, facing Saladin at the Battle of Belvoir Castle, where the heat was so intense that many on both sides died of heat exhaustion, but eventually Baldwin won the battle and repelled Saladin. Ending the campaign, Saladin then launched a fleet from Egypt to attack the Crusader city of Beirut, which was an important trading hub for the Jerusalemites. Baldwin responded by launching fleets from Acre and Tyre, as well as assembling his land army, saving Beirut. Saladin then spent the autumn attacking the Zengids once again, while Baldwin took the opportunity to raid the Ayyubids lands around Damascus. In February of 1183, Reynaud of Chatillon launched a bold campaign into the Red Sea, harassing the Ayyubid sultan's trade links there, dragging their ships into pieces across the hot desert and reassembling them in the Red Sea to attack Aqaba, with another squadron raiding the coast of Hejaz, capturing merchants and seizing their goods. Horrified that Reynaud could attack the trade links so close to Mecca and Medina, the holiest places in Islam, he launched a fleet from Cairo to suppress Reynaud's campaign, capturing and killing Reynaud's men in Aqaba, and then pursuing the rest on the coast, prompting Reynaud to flee back to the kingdom, while his remaining men were then cornered in a ravine and all slaughtered, as Saladin fears that anyone who knew how to threaten Mecca and Medina would be used by the Crusaders to attack the cities. Saladin then used the Red Sea campaign as justification to besiege the Crusader fort of Kerak in Transjordan, though Saladin likely would have done this one day or another, as he was fully committed to the jihad by this point, with Patriarch Heraclius, the Archbishop of Caesarea and Latin Patriarch of Jerusalem, sending letters to all great leaders of Europe to aid Jerusalem in its time of need. This concern was well founded, as in June of 1183, Aleppo, the stronghold of the Zengids, finally fell to the Ayyubid Sultanate, fully encircling the Kingdom of Jerusalem. And at this time, things got worse as Baldwin's condition drastically degraded, with the High Court urging that a new regent be appointed, with Baldwin selecting Guy de Lusignan, now his brother-in-law. Saladin then made his move, crossing the Jordan River and invading the Kingdom of Jerusalem, being met by the kingdom's largest army as described by William of Tyre. Guy de Lusignan camped at Safuria, where they had plenty of water supplies, and with the Crusaders fighting over the space of 9 days and on the defensive, Saladin couldn't press the attack, and soon gave up, returning to Damascus. Despite the victory, Baldwin believed that a decisive victory was possible against Saladin, and that Guy was far too cautious in his battle plan, dismissing him as regent and once again assuming the throne. But within a month of these events, Saladin returned, attacking Transjordan and the fort of Kerak, pounding its walls day and night with trebuchets as Baldwin's army approached, but the castle held, and Saladin retreated. But the siege was very difficult for Baldwin, as by now his leprosy had become debilitating, forcing him to hand over commands to Raymond of Tripoli halfway through, with his condition becoming critical in 1185, with many in the court realizing that this time the king was not to recover. And so, between March and May of 1185, King Baldwin IV of Jerusalem died, finally succumbing to his illness. Beforehand, Baldwin IV had the court recognize Raymond as regent till the soon-to-be Baldwin V came of age, and should he die, the Holy Roman Emperor and kings of France and England should choose the new successor, and made sure that Sibylla and her husband would not take the throne, as by now he was convinced that they were not capable to rule. Despite all his woes during his reign, Baldwin IV still reigned as a great king, repelling countless foreign invasions where the odds were against him, securing order and stability within the kingdom, and being the shining example of making the most out of a bad situation. If only the impossible had happened. If only Baldwin IV lived longer, to secure his kingdom's future and leave behind capable leadership, so that the Holy Land forevermore lay within Christian hands. If only. Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, please like and subscribe. As always, the next part of ancient Greece is coming next, so stay tuned. Until then, goodbye.